Hello, everyone. My name is Susan Cleary, and I'm the Director of Policy and Public Outreach at the State Department's Bureau of Oceans, Environment, and Science. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's live interactive event here in Washington, D.C. We Need Nature, the Importance of Biodiversity. This discussion comes at a critical time. We're seeing record levels of warming on this planet, unprecedented melting of glaciers in the Arctic, and increased acidification of our oceans. So what are the implications for global biodiversity, and what needs to happen to address these issues? These are precisely the questions that will be raised next week at the largest conservation event on the planet, the IUCN World Conservation Congress. For the first time ever, this event is coming to the United States, and it's going to be hosted by the state of Hawaii. Thousands of representatives from governments, NGOs, and the scientific community will gather to make major decisions about international conservation efforts. To help shed light on the importance of this upcoming event and why we should be concerned about the state of biodiversity on our planet, I have two distinguished experts with me, Dr. Sam Gahn, a senior scientist and cultural advisor at the Nature Conservancy, Hawaii, and Amanda McCarty, Assistant Director for Partnerships at the National Sea Grant Office, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They've spent their careers in different areas. Sam has focused on Hawaiian ecology and culture. Amanda has worked on global ocean and climate issues. However, what they do share is the use of scientific research and analysis to make informed decisions on conserving and sustaining our precious ecological systems. Thank you, too, so much for being here today. We're delighted to have you. Now, before we start into the discussion, I just wanted to say hello to everyone joining us online through Facebook. Live as well are our viewing groups in Papua New Guinea and Samoa right now, and we're ready to take your questions. If you are on Facebook, please use the comment section to ask your question, and we'll get to as many as we can during this hour. And with that, I wanted to start the conversation with a question for each of you. Dr. Gahn, Hawaii is just about to host the World Conservation Congress, and some call this the Olympics of conservation. Can you tell us a little bit more about that event and why this gathering is important for the topic of biodiversity?
Well, certainly the idea of the Olympics of conservation comes from the fact that the IUCN's World Conservation Congress occurs once every 4 years. 4 years ago, it was in Jeju, Korea, South Korea, and this time, as you said, the first time that the United States has hosted the IUCN Conservation Congress. It's occurring in Honolulu, Hawaii, and people are gearing up, and the preparations are reaching a fevered pace now, because in just about a week will be the opening day, September 1st, of thousands of delegates from 160 or so countries coming to meet on conservation issues globally. And it's occurring in the Hawaiian Islands, which is one of the hot spots of biodiversity conservation in the United States and indeed in the world.
That's wonderful. And I wonder if I could turn it to Amanda for a second. Hawaii obviously is surrounded by oceans, but ocean and climate is one of the big topics as well, not only at the conference in Hawaii, but in a follow-up conference in Washington right after that. Can you just talk to us a little bit? I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand the threat that climate change has on the ocean. I mean, how seriously is the impact of climate on the ocean?
Well, it's very serious. I think a lot of people don't realize that climate change is ocean change. 50% of the change that we see in the climate is actually taking place in the oceans. The oceans and our climate are interwoven. And so what we do to the climate, we are doing directly to the oceans. It's everything from changing temperatures to changing currents to changing pH. The oceans are acidifying. So it's pretty serious, and you know, the oceans and humans are tightly interwoven too. So what we do to the oceans, we do to ourselves.
Thank you very much. Now let's go to our viewing group in Apia, Samoa. I wonder if our guests gathered there have a question for the panel.
I have a question for Dr. Sam Gahn. In relation to your background as a cultural advisor, how do you see the role of traditional knowledge in monitoring some of our biodiversity tools? So tracking our progress on biodiversity targets.
Hawaiian culture is the prominent indigenous culture that would be interplaying with with biodiversity conservation. And I'm the current chair of the Hawaii Conservation Alliance, which is 25 different federal, state, and private organizations that are all devoted to conservation of Hawaii's biodiversity and ecosystems, land and sea. That group recently put together a position paper acknowledging the importance of Hawaiian culture and the need to integrate Hawaiian values, knowledge, and approaches into conservation efforts in Hawaii. This becomes more and more important as we look to community corroborations in management of land and sea. No government is able to handle the huge conservation issues. Everyone in all communities living in Hawaii need to be involved in this in an active way, either in the prevention or the mitigation or the repair of environmental damage that has occurred over the last few centuries, and certainly in the years to come with global climate change affecting both land, fresh water, and ocean resources. To know that you live in the context of an island people that had sustainably lived in those ecosystems for 1,000 years means that there are many lessons to be learned by paying attention to cultural knowledge and to indigenous approaches.
Thank you, Dr. Gon. That was very interesting. Okay, now let's turn to our viewing group in Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. Do we have a question from our group there?
I was wondering if you could talk about the experience in Hawaii with ecotourism and sort of monetizing conservation. I'm the economic officer here, economic and ESCH officer here at Post. I hear a lot of people say, definitely want to conserve, but we have to feed our families, we have to fish, we have to do these things. You talk about some successes globally, maybe in using conservation to drive economic growth.
The history of the history of tourism in Hawaii has hardly been ecologically friendly. It's been mostly a matter of building up resorts on the coast so that people have a nice warm place to swim and lots of shopping to do. But as more and more sophisticated tourists arrive in the islands, they are more interested in what is uniquely available in the islands, whether it's endemic species that are found only here and nowhere else, whether it's the cultural components, the aspects of Hawaiian culture that define the people here and their interactions with the environment. All of those things are gaining prominence. Moreover, a good example is that on the island of Hawaii at upper elevations, there is a movement now to join between both publicly held lands and privately held lands to establish an equestrian and foot trail in the heart of Hawaiian forest bird habitat, so that tourists have an opportunity to move through those habitats and ecosystems, see those birds in place rather than going to a zoological park or something. And in doing so, helping support the cost of conservation.
Thank you, Dr. Gon. Maybe I might ask Amanda as well to weigh in on this one, because I think a lot of the work that you do with NOAA really does impact on ecotourism as well.
Definitely. The program that I work for, the National Sea Grant Program, is a series of 33 university-based programs throughout the United States. And so we are working at the local community level throughout the coastal communities of the United States. And a great example that relates to this also comes from Hawaii. The idea of ecotourism, of bringing people in to appreciate your ecology, is great. And at the same time, you want to make sure that you're not destroying the ecology while you do it. And so one of the programs that our Hawaii Sea Grant program implemented is the Hanama Bay Education Program. And this is a program by which visitors, when they come in, 10,000 people a day are coming in to snorkel in this one bay. And that can have massive impacts on the ecosystem. And so Hawaii Sea Grant partnered with schools and other organizations to say, we want you to know a little bit about these ecosystems before you dive in. And so there's a video that you watch in an education center. There are people that you can ask questions about. But the goal is to say, you want to come back 5 years from now, and we want this to be beautiful when you get here too. So it's a great opportunity to bring education into ecotourism as well.
It's a great point.
In that educational video that greets people at Hanauma Bay is the voice of my kumu, the person who taught me Hawaiian chant. And put me through traditional rites of passage as a cultural practitioner. That is his voice celebrating the biodiversity of Hanauma Bay in the Hawaiian cultural context. A kind of appreciation that we hope the sophisticated tourists, at least, will be able to appreciate and take back with them.
What a great, that's wonderful. Maybe we could go to our Facebook Live audience for some online questions. So we have one here right now. The question is, if you had one plant or animal species that you think needs more attention brought to it, what would it be and why? That's a great question. Maybe, do you mind if we go again to you, Dr. Gon in Hawaii? Is that do you have an animal species you think needs more attention?
Wow. You know, we have hundreds of birds. We have thousands of native invertebrates. And it seems that the megafauna worldwide are the ones that get most of the attention, the pandas and the tigers and bright colored tropical birds. But in Hawaii, the invertebrates have long been neglected. And one of my favorite invertebrates, in fact, the one that earned me my PhD, is the Hawaiian happy face spider. And that spider, if you can imagine, a small transparent yellow spider with a clown's face on its back, living quietly under leaves. It is one of those canaries in the coal mine, if you will. If those spiders are doing well, then we know that the forest ecosystem that they exist in are doing well. So paying attention to the small denizens of our endemic ecosystems is one way to make sure that the entire ecosystem is functioning.
Well, that's wonderful. Amanda, do you have an answer to the one species you think needs more attention?
I'm going to go small too. I'm an invertebrate person, and so I'm going to go with the pteropod. It's a very, very small, tiny organism. Usually you look at it under a microscope, and it sort of looks like a sea butterfly. And what's great about these pteropods are that they are the base of the food chain. And so many other things eat them, which then are eaten. And so a lot of the ocean depends on things like the pteropod. And the reason that I think it's important to pay more attention to them is because they are being impacted greatly by ocean acidification. So as the climate's changing and the oceans are becoming more acidic, the shells of these pteropods are not forming as firmly. And so they're not surviving as much. And organisms like this that are the basis of the food chains of the ocean are starting to have a hard time surviving. So I say pay attention to the pteropod.
That's great. That's wonderful. Do you think we could, we talked a lot about the problems so far, but maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the success stories. Oftentimes when we talk about these problems, you know, we know the threats are out there, but we don't communicate enough about some of the things that are actually working. Would you have anything to share with us, Dr. Gon, success stories about restoring or protecting nature?
Well, I think what comes to mind